Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Matt Malinowski, Director of Education at the Atomic Museum. Before we get started, please note that during this webinar, only the presenters and panelists will be viewable and recorded. Audio and video from attendees will not be shared, but you can write your questions or comments in the Q&A feature in Zoom. At the conclusion of the presentation, a Q&A with our presenter today will be moderated by the panelists. Today's program is the Nuclear Weapons Testing Program by Grace Islas. Grace was the successful applicant for an internship supported by the National Nuclear Security Administration, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and the Atomic Museum, organizations that have goals and values that align and overlap. The National Nuclear Security Administration has a multi-pronged mission, which includes maintaining the nuclear stockpile, non-proliferation, powering the Navy, counterterrorism, and counter-proliferation. Since its inception in 1952, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory's defining responsibility has been national security, ensuring the safety, security, and effectiveness of the nation's nuclear stockpile. Their mission has broadened in recent years as dangers ranging from nuclear proliferation and terrorism to cyber attacks and climate change increasingly threaten national security and global stability. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory applies science and technology to make the world a safer place. At the Atomic Museum, we're a national science, history, and educational institution that tells the story of America's nuclear weapons testing program at the Nevada test site. The museum uses lessons of the past and the present to better understand the extent and the effect of nuclear testing on worldwide nuclear deterrence and geopolitical history. Under this joint internship, Grace spent the summer conducting research at the Atomic Museum with supervision from our Director of Curation and Exhibits, Joseph Kent. She also had guidance and support from Matt Buckner, who is a design physicist, divisions group leader, and experimental physicist at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Grace is a third-year undergraduate student majoring in chemistry at the University of California, Merced. Her presentation today will discuss the history of the U.S. nuclear weapons testing program, and she'll explain how the discovery of negative health effects caused by low-level radiation and subsequent studies may have influenced sitting U.S. presidents in passing policies. And now please help me welcome Grace Islas to discuss the nuclear weapons testing program. Thanks, Grace. Take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Before we get started, I would like to introduce myself again. My name is Grace Islas. I am currently a third year at the University of California, Merced. This past summer, I was given the opportunity to intern in a collaboration with the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, the Atomic Museum, and the NNSA. In this presentation, I will go over the history of the nuclear weapons testing program. So let's get started. Through my research of the nuclear weapons testing program, I was able to learn on how the negative health effects caused by low-level radiation had a significant impact on the presidential decisions relating to the program as a whole. Beginning with the origin of the bomb in 1941, research was approved by President Franklin D. Roosevelt after being urged by the Director of Scientific Research and Development, Vannevar Bush, who is shown in the picture below. In order for the research to be carried on, the Manhattan Project was created in 1942 and lasted until 1945. The project was led by General Leslie R. Groves and J. Robert Oppenheimer. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb, Trinity, was tested on the Alamogordo bombing range in New Mexico. After the creation of the bomb, government officials expressed need for it during World War II. On the mornings of August 6th and 9th, the U.S. deployed 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the picture shown on the right of Hiroshima, we are able to see the aftermath of these bombs. The damage was catastrophic, resulting in the deaths of over 100,000 people instantly. After the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, many scientists began to question their morals and continued research of these nuclear weapons. Scientists, including Oppenheimer, advised against continued research. On the other hand, there were other government officials and scientists, such as Edward Teller, who encouraged further research of nuclear weapons. In 1952, Teller created and tested the first hydrogen bomb. As a reference, a hydrogen bomb is said to have the potential of being 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb. Continued research and tests of nuclear weapons were conducted at the Nevada test site. As shown on the picture on the right, many of the citizens of the surrounding areas would protest the site after studies and reports of health concerns were revealed. These surrounding areas included populations from Arizona, Utah, and of course, Nevada. Many of the communities surrounding the areas lived in ranch towns and were farmers. After each atmospheric test was conducted, the vegetation and livestock would be exposed to the fallout emitted from these tests. The populations affected by low-level radiation of these nuclear weapons were known as downwinders. Due to the frequency of these tests, unfortunate incidents occurred. On March 1st, 1954, the Bravo test was conducted in the Marshall Islands. This thermonuclear bomb ended up being far more powerful than what scientists predicted. The test produced fallout and damage from the surrounding areas. The crew of the fishing vessel Lucky Dragon were among these who were exposed to high levels of radiation. An additional incident of an atmospheric test occurred on May 19, 1953, when the Harry shot was conducted at the Nevada test site. This nuclear test once again surpassed the prediction of scientists who designed it. The detonation yielded over 20 kilotons over the advised limit of radiation exposure. The fallout of the bomb spread to the northeast side of St. George, Utah, by strong winds. This nuclear weapons test was later nicknamed Dirty Harry. In October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the United States and Cuba to a standoff. The world was on the brink of starting a nuclear war. After U.S. intelligence discovered evidence of a general Soviet arms buildup on Cuba, President John F. Kennedy issued a public warning against the introduction of offensive weapons into Cuba and demanded the removal of nuclear weapons from Cuba on national television. The president had also ordered a naval blockade on Cuba that would prevent the Soviet Union from delivering any more nuclear weapons. After the Soviets agreed to remove their nuclear weapons from Cuba, the crisis subsided, and efforts to officially continue testing resumed. In 1963, Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union officially signed the Limited Test Ban Treaty. This treaty banned testing nuclear weapons in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. Scientists and government officials decided to move the testing underground to continue research of nuclear weapons. The urge to continue research was greatly influenced by the current state of the Cold War, as many countries were beginning to test their nuclear weapons in case of need during the war. As this was a new playing field for these weapons, scientists began more research, and government officials took further precautions to continue successfully and safely. To monitor safety precautions at the site, the government created a safety group known as the RadSafe team to keep workers out of high radiation levels. Here at the Atomic Museum, we were able to interview 6 past employees who worked at the site and for the RadSafe team. They explained what exactly they did and how it was a constant learning experience. Now we'll play a clip from one of those employees explaining the work that they did underground.
Well, we were the ones that stood around while the work was done and tried to keep everybody out of any high radiation levels. Quite a few of us here worked primarily in the tunnels, which was where it got more interesting. There were 2 different kinds of testing. The tunnels were looking for the effects of nuclear explosions on other weapons. And the vertical holes down in the valley were generally testing new devices. And our job really was safety, watching for radiation levels, for explosive mixtures, for dangerous gases like carbon monoxide and that sort of stuff. So it could be very dull or very interesting.
Due to the new environment, several incidents occurred during the underground tests, such as the Bainbury incident in 1970. High water content in the detonation area resulted in a 300-foot fissure. Radioactive particles filled the air and rained down all over the site, resulting in the death of 2 workers from leukemia due to the exposure of iodine-131. This unfortunate incident halted underground testing for nearly 6 months to perform a proper investigation. The investigation discovered the high water content, creating a new standard for all nuclear tests to go through before testing. The U.S. continued underground testing for another 20 years, with the last underground test being Divider at the Nevada test site on September 23, 1992. Many factors, including the end of the Soviet Union on December 1991, influenced the termination of traditional nuclear weapons testing. As the need for testing was not as imperative as it used to be during the Cold War, government officials worldwide agreed to make an effort to end nuclear weapons testing. The U.S. entered a self-imposed moratorium on nuclear weapon testing in 1992, and in 1996, the United States, along with China, France, the United Kingdom, and Russia, signed the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which bans nuclear testing worldwide. Although the treaty has not been officially enforced, the effort to ban nuclear weapon testing continues. In 2000, Congress created the National Nuclear Security Administration, also known as the NNSA, as a semi-autonomous agency with the U.S. Department of Energy. It is responsible for enhancing national security through the military application of nuclear science. The NNSA is also responsible for maintaining the stockpile stewardship, which was created after the United States ceased underground testing. The stockpile stewardship maintains U.S. nuclear weapons safely, security, and reliability without full-scale testing. And in 2010, the Nevada test site was renamed the Nevada National Security Site, as the U.S. no longer needed it for testing and only for national security needs. To help those who have been affected by the fallout, the government created the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act in 1990 to make payments to some of the people who claim to have been affected by the fallout from these nuclear tests. But these payments are only available under a limited set of conditions. In the picture shown, you are able to see what areas were affected by the nuclear fallout. Quoting from the Making of the Limited Test Ban Treaty by Michael Evans, it is essential to note that although debate about impact of low doses of radioactivity continues, a study completed in 2001 by the National Cancer Institute Center for Disease Control tentatively concluded that exposure to fallout from these nuclear tests during the 1950s was associated with an increase in U.S. cancer mortalities. Fallout exposure may have caused more than 11,000 deaths. As there is an end to the traditional nuclear weapons testing, scientists will continuously study all radiation-related health concerns to prevent future cases. Again, my name is Grace Islas, and this concludes my presentation on the nuclear weapons testing program. I would like to thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Grace. That's a fantastic presentation. Very well done. We're so privileged that you brought the culmination of your research to our audience today. And We sincerely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy class schedule as well to share that all with us. So thank you so much for your presentation. You know, I came on board at the Atomic Museum as Grace's internship was kind of coming to a close. But, you know, over those couple of weeks that I did get to know you, I could see your work ethic and drive, and you're going to have a successful future ahead of you, I'm sure. And I can't wait to see where you go from here, Grace. So again, thank you for your commitment and your professionalism during your internship. And I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You know, I've got a couple of questions for you, and then we've got a few questions in the Q&A as well. So let's kind of just do a little session here of question and answer. So, you know, kind of off topic from your presentation, but I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about what it was like being able to interact with professionals from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, of course. So, as you know, I was working with Matthew Buckner from the laboratory. He had reached out to me during the end of the school year, and I was able to, unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet with him in person, but we were able to exchange emails and basically share our notes on how this project was coming together. I wasn't able to meet any other people from the laboratory, but during one of my tour visits, I did meet others from the Los Alamos laboratory, as well as just like anyone else who is involved with the project. So it was very interesting.
Great. So yeah, it sounds pretty neat to be able to connect with folks like that. What was it like when you sat down with the RadSafe team? That's a part of this presentation that I didn't know about before today. So was that an interesting moment to be able to hear their stories firsthand?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't there during that interview. That was conducted by Joseph Kent. Before I came, they had let me know just months before that they actually interviewed these employees. So watching those videos and watching the full interview is really eye-opening and really interesting to know on how they first started and where it changed from the whole entire process of those 20 years of doing underground testing.
What about, so you spent a good bit of time here at the museum as well, right? So you were here in person with us. Was there something that you liked the best about being here at the museum? Was there an artifact or an exhibit or just an interesting thing that you learned while you were here?
I think the most interesting artifact, or just the fact, was how powerful and big the shift was from the atomic bomb to these hydrogen bombs that were created. Like it was noted, it was almost 1,000 times more powerful. So you can see on how much work and how much a big gap it really spread just from creating these two bombs and how much damage that they both are capable of. But just the science behind it all, it was very interesting to see who worked on it and how it evolved throughout its entire history.
So this is a question from the Q&A, and I'm just gonna kind of hand this one to you and get your thoughts on it, Grace. So just your personal opinion. Do you think it's conceivable that the US could return to nuclear weapons tests, or can they be satisfactorily simulated by computers? Like, is what they're doing today enough?
I think when it comes to safety wise, it is enough, only because due to the exposure of these tests, it is quite harmful to surrounding areas. If there is another way somehow in the future that we're able to test these without causing so much damage to the environment and to the locals around, I think they could be able to, but that's just, I don't know that science yet, so I would like to see where that goes.
Perfect. Here's my last one for you too. And just overall, would you recommend the internship experience that you had to other students? Did you find it useful? We hope you enjoyed your time here with us and working with the lab.
Yeah, of course. I really enjoyed my time at the museum. I was able to learn a lot of more facts I would have never known before. I think it also just helps, diving into history and learning more about the past, which is important because we have to understand the past in order to move on to the future. So, of course, I would definitely recommend this internship.
Well, thank you again, Grace, for your presentation. On behalf of the Atomic Museum, we really want to extend our appreciation for you joining us today. Also want to thank our colleagues at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and the National Nuclear Security Administration for their continued collaboration and support. Hopefully in the future, we can continue to provide internships like this to dedicated students like Grace and help develop the future of science, technology, and engineering and math in the workforce. From the museum, our next event is right around the corner, and it's part of our Atomic series, and it's going to be something pretty unique and special. It's on Thursday, November 9th from 6 to 8. We'll be hosting a conversation that's titled Atomic Life, Shaken and Stirred, and we're going to have American author Cecilia Tishy, who is the Gertrude Conway Vanderbilt Professor of English and Professor of American Studies at Vanderbilt University. Cecilia and I will be sitting down to discuss her new book, Mid-Century Cocktails, History, Lore, and Recipes from America's Atomic Age. If you're in the audience, you'll be served hors d'oeuvres and you'll get sample cocktails if you're 21 and over. And Cecilia will be signing her book afterwards. The event itself is taking place at Atomic Motors here in Henderson, Nevada. So we'll be surrounded by classic cars while we're sipping on cocktails from the Atomic Age time period. More information and ticketing can be found on our website, atomicmuseum.vegas, or by following our various social media channels. Again, thank you so much to Grace for your presentation and for your commitment during your internship. It was fantastic having you here at the museum and great getting to know you. And we hope to see everybody soon at another upcoming Atomic Museum event, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.